everyone, and welcome to the first session of the day for the last day of the Bold Strokes Books Bookathon for winter. That's not the official title, but it is now. My name is Carsen Taite, and I'm lucky to be your moderator, and I get to talk to all these fine authors and you. So I will just start out by letting each of these authors make a quick introduction and show us their current title if they have it, or they may act it out with a small interpretive dance if they do not have their book handy. So we'll start with you, Kathy Knowles. I'm hoping for a dance here. And by the way, the title of this panel is Sweet Heat, which we'll get to later. Kathy?
Hi, everyone. It is still 10 a.m. On the West Coast right now, but that's fine. I get up early in the morning. Hello to everyone. Thank you for attending this panel. Nice. Well, I can't say nice to see you because I don't see anyone except the other panelists. But I've been writing books for about 10 years, and I have approximately 10 books to in print right now. And I live in San Francisco, and my latest book, which I hope to be talking a little bit more about today, is called A Fairer Tomorrow. Here's the cover. And it is definitely a sweet romance. It is, however, a historical romance from post-World War II San Francisco in the 30s, and it is an interracial romance, and I consider it definitely a sweet type of romance that we're gonna talk about. And however, along with the sweetness is a lot of other problems for my two lovers, including racism, homophobia, et cetera, et cetera. So that's all woven into the story. It's very nice to be here, and hope you guys like the panel. Thanks.
Thank you, Kathy. Amanda, you're like at the opposite end of this time zone spectrum. So
I am. I'm like the other bookend. It's 6 p.m. here in Chester in the United Kingdom. So my name's Amanda Radley. I've written nearly 25 books. I think nearly all of them would be considered sweet books. I have a strong focus on characters and dialogue. My most recent release was Humbug, which came out in December. My next release, I can't do an interpretive dance for it because I don't really know how I would, but it's called Reading Her, and I'll liaise with you, Carsen. We'll see if we can work that. We'll workshop it later.
I believe that you can.
That's the faith. The faith carries me through. But yeah, Reading Her comes out in February. Yeah, and I'm really excited to be here.
Excellent. Excited to have you. Well, since we're out of the country, we'll go to CJ Birch, our resident Canadian on the panel.
Hello. So I'm. This is my latest, The Edge of Yesterday. I don't know if it would be a sweet romance. There is a really nice romance in it that I enjoyed writing, and there is a middle section that is, I guess, less dark than the rest of the book, which is a lot darker. It deals with basically humans in the future have to live underground because we've kind of destroyed it for ourselves, and they send back an operative in time to remove some people from the timeline. Easton Gray, who is that operative, falls in love with one of the people she's supposed to remove, and so now she has to decide where her loyalty is, basically.
Love or duty.
Yes.
Yes, excellent. And Anna Hartnett Reichardt, that's a lot of name, and I love it. and I love your background. I hope that's real. You're in this real cool library.
Oh yeah, this is my home library. No.
It's amazing. This is your first novel, yes?
Yeah, so Changing Majors is my current release, and first of the Alder series, so it's freshman year, and it is quite sweet. It's like coming of age, and you're a freshman in college, figuring it all out, and there's definitely some romance in there. And then my next release is Catching Feelings, and that's going to be sophomore year, book 2. And that follows the main characters that are on the softball team, and it's kind of enemies to lovers. So a little bit of a pivot, but it's a fun one.
Excellent. Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Charlotte Greene, tell us.
Hello. Hi. It's so nice to be here. My newest book is The Wedding Setup. It's
That
a
sounds sweet.
Valentine's Day romance. So it's set Valentine's Day, and it's set in my hometown of Loveland, Colorado, which has a big Valentine's celebration every year and decorates heavily for it. And it's about, I think it's a sweet romance. That's how I wanted it. It's got a touch of angst a little bit, but yeah, it's a city girl visiting small town, falling in love with small town girl. Will they, won't they? And yeah, and it's absolutely a sweet romance.
Well, awesome. I thought it'd be fun to, I was looking up definitions of sweet romance, and everybody, I mean, basically what I read was light, breezy, no sex on the page, is what the internet says. We take the internet with a grain of salt. So I thought it'd be fun, even if your current work is not super sweet. All of you have dabbled in sweetness, and I would like to know what you think are the hallmarks of a of a sweet romance. And I would like to start with you, Charlotte, because that a Valentine's book definitely rings sweet when people are going to look for books.
Yeah, and yeah, you brought up Hallmark, and that was sort of what I was trying to echo, at least a little bit. I wanted it lighthearted. I wanted it. I think when I was thinking sweet, I was also thinking funny. And anybody that's read some of my other books that are horror novels, those aren't funny, right? So I was trying to channel like kind of funny, and I wanted lots, like I have an ensemble cast of lots of sort of silly sisters and funny friends, a little bit like a Bridget Jonesy kind of lighthearted friendships. So yeah, I think I was thinking funny really is what makes it sweet.
I like that, funny. So Anna, I'm going to go to you because you also have kind of an ensemble cast of characters, which, does that help you with the sweetness? Because freshman year in college is not necessarily a sweet time.
That's fair. Lots of ups and downs for sure. And in the book as well. And yeah, I think having an ensemble cast definitely does. I was going to add some vulnerability to this sweet little recipe. And I think like when you're working things out, like when you're vulnerable with your love interest, it's like that kind of builds the sweetness too, is putting yourself out there and like hoping for the best and just being pretty raw. So yeah, and I think you can definitely do that with your friends too, which is a lot of college as well, as building all of those relationships. So I think all the friendships are quite sweet as well.
Well, I think friendships can help you from getting in that deep, dark place where you're just spiraling in your own thoughts about angsty things. So yeah, that's a really good. Excellent. Amanda, you're the queen of sweet. So.
Yeah, it's funny, like you, I also consulted Master Google Esquire to figure out what sweet romance actually was, and ended up really not understanding at all anymore, because it's different to lots of people. And I actually found that there's a thing called sweet heat as well. So apparently the order goes wholesome, sweet, sensual, which can sometimes be called sweet with heat, then sexy, and then erotic. And then within that, people have different definitions of what that means. And I think it's really difficult because one person's wholesome is another person's sweet. And if you don't have a chart, so, how many kisses do you have? Okay, that puts you in this category. It's very hard to define your book. But personally for me, I feel that sweet romance is more about emotional intimacy. And they're usually described, as we've heard, they're described as heartwarming and feel good and tender and things like that. And some people expect no love scenes. Some people expect it sort of behind closed doors. but I can't pin it down because it's different for so many people. So I think it's the overall sort of feeling you come away with. There's no sort of definition with regards to how much or how little sex is in there. It's unless you're going to be erotica, in which case you're well out of the sweet environment. It's just different to different people, but that emotional feeling that you come away with is what it's quite intangible.
And how would you quantify that feeling?
I just think it's like, well, Hallmark, like you said. I mean, we don't really do Hallmark movies here in the UK, but I know exactly what you mean. It's just that kind of feeling of it's sweet, it's heartwarming, it's a sort of like, it's the book that you imagine, when you're looking for stock images and you see the woman with the blanket, with the hot chocolate and the book, and you know how she feels. That's how you feel when you read a sweet romance.
Excellent. So let's take a quick audience poll. I'm not going to do an official poll. You could just type your answer in the chat. How many kisses until you cross the from sweet to spicy line? So, let's just chime in, everybody in the audience. How many kisses until your novel's no longer sweet and it's all heat? So no one's answering. Here we go. We got 5, 10. Thank you, Anna. All right. Kathy, how about you? Talk to me about what makes a book sweet for you.
I had never considered that question before, but when I was thinking about it, and just now I was listening to other folks' definitions of sweet, I think by example, romances, they come in all across the whole entire spectrum of how much sex is in them. And when I think of one that's not sweet, I probably think of characters who in the plot, they get in bed first and then they decide later on how their relationship is going to be formed, or they have a lot of emotional problems trying to relate, those internal conflicts we're so fond of writing. And it's not that they can't have sweet romance doesn't have some issues, but the quotient is definitely turned down. I read a Goodreads review of my current book, something I know we're discouraged.
You're very brave.
Yeah.
We are discouraged from doing it, but I can't help myself. It's a bad habit. And I read one of the reviewers that, was okay with the romance. She said, this is definitely a fade to black romance. And I thought, well, actually, no, it's not. What were you reading? But what I did in the book was make it more restrained and having to do with emotional connection. And as I said, the other things that are going on, because this is set in the 40s. And when I write historical stuff, I try to be true to the time period as I can. And the characters are a lot more naive in the 1940s, even though one of them is already out, one of them is not, but they're both kind of young and kind of naive. So I think that's a recipe for sweetness. And I try to make it, it's sort of slower. It's like the slow burn, as they say, in romance. So it's definitely not erotic romance or even sexy romance, but it's something to do with the characters. I think a lot of it has to do with their personalities and how they relate to each other.
Yeah, I like what you said about how, it's a different time, and, there wasn't the internet or the master Google. And, people they were just kind of feeling their way. So yeah, that lends itself to sweetness. CJ, I saved you for last because you said you had a bit of sweet inside, but you have written also some more, all your books aren't angsty. And
so for me, I think Amanda touched on a point that I would add to. For me, sweet is when you finish the book, you want to start all over again as if you've never read it. It's that feeling that it was just so enjoyable to just discover everything that happens in the book with these characters. And at the end, you're feeling that sense of, oh, I want to do that all over again. So I think actually Just One Kiss or Just One Taste is probably my sweetest romance. And it also involves food. So
Yeah.
there you go.
So since you brought up food, I'll just do a speed round question here, and we'll start with Charlotte, and it's potato chips or donuts? Pick one.
Donuts.
Amanda, crisps or donuts?
Is that donuts DONUT? Because that's wrong. But if it's
Yes.
got a U in it, then donuts.
Okay. Anna?
Donuts for sure.
Okay. CJ?
Oh God, that's a tough one.
It is a tough one.
I'm gonna go with chips.
Kathy, round
Chips.
us out.
Chips.
Okay. Donuts win by a slim margin.
What about you, Carsen?
I gotta have both. You know, I just can't choose
Together.
At the same time.
at the same time. Okay. So you've all kind of touched on this, but tell us a little bit. I'm gonna combine these two questions. Tell us a little bit about your current work, how it fits in the category of sweet romance, and then compare it to your body of work.
Both of his stuff is downstairs.
If you have a body of work, and how it compares to what other genres you may write in. So that's just kind of a very
In the
broad
kitchen
question.
on the heater.
You can basically say whatever you want. Amanda, I'm going to start with you because you said almost all your work is sweet romance, and I'm curious what isn't.
Well, I've written a couple of mysteries. So
That's true, but
yeah. Well, my upcoming Reading Her, which is coming up, has got a couple of sex scenes in, because generally I write about characters who come together over a period of time. So it's a sort of more slow burn romance, and it's not that combustible physical attraction. It is in Reading Her, so that needed to have sex scenes in to build that environment. But a lot of the sort of stories I write is about people coming together over a long period, and generally that just, it lends itself better to a sweeter story. It lends itself better to the sort of will they, won't they pull. As you know, in Humbug, which came out in December, these two characters have had to, you know, overcome their preconceived notions of one another and slowly get to know one another, and that really does lend itself to sweet. You know, if you go back to the idea of a Hallmark movie, that does kind of lend itself to that kind of storyline telling. So I have written a couple that wouldn't be really considered sweet. I've written a couple of sort of more intriguey things as well, and I've written a couple of sort of slightly higher heat. But I think because I generally lean into things that are slow burn, I've kind of cornered myself into sweet romance a lot of the time.
so why is that that's got to be your favorite? So why is that?
I think because sometimes I like to write a conflict where they're just not going to come together immediately. So the whole part of the story is that they're not going to come together immediately. So it's going to build up, and there's going to be I quite often write age gap and things like that. And with an age gap romance, it's quite romantic for the older character to be, I'm too old for them, I don't want to ruin their life, I don't want there to be a power imbalance and things like that. And all of these kind of discussions that come together, like certainly that happens in Humbug, it lends itself to a sort of slower pace along the book, and that lends itself to a sweeter kind of environment because this person is being selfless, and being selfless is a very sweet and romantic notion.
All right, so Anna, let's hop to you. And what you have one book out, but you're writing another, so you're technically a multi-published author.
I reckon. Yeah, I think for mine as well, I'd say like freshman year coming of age, there's also kind of like this innocence and like purity of intentions. Even though you're messing up, making all these mistakes together as friends, you're all like pure of heart. You know, you all want each other to be happy. And same with the love interest. And this is also a coming out story for both of the main character and the love interest. And so I think that they both want what's best for themselves and for each other. And there's that, yeah, that innocence and purity of heart that's also very sweet about it.
And it's, your book is set at it's a Catholic university, a private Catholic university. And like your main characters, they're on scholarship. So
Yeah.
there's this, when I first read the description, I was thinking it would be a lot more angsty, you know.
Yeah.
The book is very sweet. The friendships are great. I love how they interact with each other, and then they also forgive each other's.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you for that. And yeah, the next one, Catching Feelings, there's more enemies to lovers, but also like that build up to, you know, breaking the enemy down and becoming more lovers is also sweet and a little more spicy for sure.
Okay. CJ, you write in various genres as well. So, you know.
So my current that's just out is, I call it soft sci-fi, but I think what's interesting about the love story is it actually is more than just one, because of the way that the plot works. Easton Gray goes back in time, and kind of the first time she's there, she kind of screws up. She gets attacked by a dog. So she ends up meeting Tess, who ends up being her love interest, while breaking into her veterinary clinic. So that puts Tess on edge and creates this sort of weird pull-push dynamic where she is attracted, but she's not sure about this woman. And then through happenstance, Easton ends up getting reset, and she ends up back where she started with all the knowledge of what's going to happen. So she doesn't get attacked by the dog. So she ends up meeting Tess in a coffee shop the next morning, and there's like this sweet sort of flirtation that happens. Sort of Easton's trying not to make it happen because she knows ultimately she's supposed to kill this woman, but it sort of develops, and then it resets again. And now Easton is in love with this woman who has no idea who she is. So it creates a little bit of angst, so you get a whole bunch. And then I have my sci-fis that are definitely not sweet heat. They're definitely a lot darker. And then Just One Taste, I think, would be, yeah, like I said before, my closest. It's not a lot of angst, hopefully, from what I can tell. I didn't write it with angst, I don't think.
No angst, just good food and good love.
Yep.
Kathy, you touched on some of the things in your book that were a little angsty, and also you write both historical and modern day romances. So which is easier to be sweet, or, you know, does that even factor in?
Well, I think the historical romances are definitely sweeter and have been described in reviewers as sweet, and I like that a lot. But I've written a lot of books that are not even close to being sweet, and non-romances. I have read, but even a modern romance I wrote that was had to do with a polyamorous relationship. I guess, in my opinion, that doesn't really count as sweet, although it ended up being that way. And you know, I think one of the sweetest ones was really the book I wrote called Warm November, and it's older protagonists, older main characters. And that I thought, and purposely made it sweet. Now, one of the things about the current one we just published, and that I purposefully made it so that it was logistically difficult all the time for them to get together. They both work in jobs that are related to the war, and they have obligations, and they're on opposite sides of the city. And this isn't a time when everybody would just hop in a car and drive somewhere.
No Uber. No.
There's no Uber. There's no. There are taxis for sure, but they don't have a lot of money either. So I thought that the result of difficulty and actually physically seeing each other made it sort of sweet as part of how they get to spend time together and how they interact. That's because I purposely did it that way as sort of a counteraction to the other stuff that's going on, which is really difficult and emotionally difficult. But in another one of our discussions, though, we were talking about how characters grow through being in love. And I like that. And I think that's always very, very sweet. And the person who has the wisdom in this relationship really is not the one you would expect to have it. It's the young African-American woman from a small town in Arkansas. Versus slightly city girl, but she was also from a farm. So I'm saying both of them are not super sophisticated. And that's kind of what happened in the wars. They just threw all these young people together, and a lot of stuff happened for them. So that's the other part of Sweet that I like, besides the, having the difficulties of how are we going to see each other? How long are we going to see each other? What can we do? That's I think is part of the sweetness.
Excellent. And yeah, that throwing people in different situations allows them to either, clash or come together. So you get to see a lot of that. Charlotte, you write some horror, which I love. You've written some erotica, which I love, and you've written sweet, which I love. So tell me, do you find the sweet in all of that? Or I think I would say that there is some sweet in all of that.
Yeah, I think, I wanted to have, I think all three of my horror novels, because that's, I think, where you would expect there not to be any sweetness. But yeah, I think there is sweet romance in all three. So in Gnarled Hollow, the ghost story, yeah, there's just this kind of background, well, maybe even kind of primary romance with the ghosts sort of around it. And I think my other two horror novels also have that. Like there's the horror, but there's definitely a sweet element to the romance that's in all three of them. I think even my erotica first three books, they have a lot of sex, but they're definitely also in love with each other. So yeah, I think there's sweet elements to that. And Pride of Porters, which is a Jane Austen sort of rewrite, is definitely a sweet, my other sweet romance.
So which do you enjoy writing more of these genres?
I had written 3 horror novels in a row. And so Wedding Setup was the first romance I'd written, and in a number of years. So that was actually, it was kind of a relief actually to not have to think about how to torture my characters. So I think I like writing both. It just depends on, it's almost kind of better for me to go back and forth, because then you sort of appreciate the other version.
So you're a chips and donuts kind of girl.
Exactly.
I knew it. So do you all think do you think there are any particular romance tropes that are best suited for a sweet romance? And Amanda, you kind of touched on this when you were talking about age gap.
Yeah, I think so. I think anywhere where there's age gap or office romance, or if there's an imbalance of power that isn't misused, where someone is going so far in the other direction to be selfless, and I think that's quite a sweet characteristic in someone. It's, that selflessness can be quite a nice thing to read about in a sometimes quite harsh world, to sort of see the opposite side and someone overthinking that gentleness. And I think especially if someone's an ice queen as well, I write a lot of ice queens, with a heart of gold, and trying to bring the sort of nice elements in them out and discover why are they an ice queen, why are they perceived to be like this, why do they feel they need to act like this, and them taking that sort of step away, or someone seeing them in a different light. Those kind of things, they quite often work well with a sweet romance, because it's challenging that convention, and it's being a lot softer than you would have expected when you first went into that story about, you know, an age gap or office romance or an ice queen. It's taken a different turn to where it could have gone.
Yeah, because both those, I've done both those and made them angsty, so you know they can go either way. But I like that you try to find those sweet, chewy middle to.
Yeah, I think it works quite well, because again, it's as you say, it's people don't know what they're going to get, but they'll be happy either way. If they go into an ice queen story and it's quite angsty and the person is just plain horrible, but you know, someone eventually will love them, or if they are actually just like really lovely, but they're just kind of like icy on the outside, whichever direction you go in, you can't go wrong. So it's that kind of like going into it and thinking, I don't know what I'm going to get, but either way I'm going to be delighted. So they both work really well.
All right, CJ, are people delighted no matter what when they read your books?
I hope so. I don't honestly.
Yes.
For me, this is a tough question, because I think honestly you can take any trope and make it anything you want. It's how you choose to portray your characters and to build it up. Because at first I was thinking slow burn, but then I was like, no, because then you've got so many, like I've never used slow burn as like a sweet heat kind of thing, right? Like, so I'm gonna actually sit right on the fence on this one and say you can pretty much take any trope you want and make it whatever you want it to be.
What can you think of one that you might be the most challenging
to make sweet?
Yeah.
Oh god. Enemies to lovers I think would be the hardest, because right there it's not starting off sweet at all. It's starting off with a lot of anger and angst, and
there's a lot to break down.
Yeah.
Anna, I don't remember the question, but you know, it was something about tropes.
All right,
Yes.
okay, I got this. Yeah, I think I definitely want to echo what CJ said, and also Charlotte, like how even like erotica, you know, there's sweetness found, and it can be found or written in all of these tropes or you know, genres. And yeah, I think like, you know, like friends to lovers is kind of what just popped in my head automatically, but also like CJ was saying, you know, you wouldn't think enemies to lovers would be sweet, but you know, I think that first moment where the first character, you know, shows their belly, like, you know, rolls over, it's like, ah, here we go, you know. So
I love that analogy. That's great.
Yeah, got dogs.
Yeah, I can tell. Kathy, how about you?
That's a tough question for me. I try not to use or tend to stay away from tropes, and the one I wrote, which was a second chance romance trope, I think was too angsty to be really sweet. But you know, I think CJ was right. You can make the characters and their relationship whatever you want to make them, and whatever plot outline you want to use. You know, the whole question of the sweetness. I tend to think that all romances are, by definition, they're that the regular, you know, classic romance, traditional, contemporary, whatever you want to call it. It's just, you know, falling in love is pretty sweet, no matter who you are and how what you have to go through to get there. So
Well, that's a great sentiment. Yeah, definitely. Charlotte, how about you? Any particular, I mean, you've written a lot of different tropes.
I think I'm with Amanda, though. I love the Ice Queen. And so Pride and Porter's my first one. It's from the perspective of the one that's not the Ice Queen, falling in love with the Ice Queen. And then Wedding Setup is from the perspective of the Ice Queen, falling in love with the not Ice Queen. So I don't think I did that consciously, but that's absolutely how it turned out. So I love an Ice Queen because I think that they're not, I like to see that ice crack, right? That's what I think everybody likes about is when that queen finally thaws, right? And then
it's the higher stakes, you know.
Yeah. And just because that vulnerable side is hidden. And then in the Wedding Setup, I also dabbled a little bit with the fomance, which I think was just sort of for humor sake, in part because it's one of those, like, you can't imagine actually doing that, but so trying to play with it a little bit and see, is there a scenario where it could seem a little bit realistic, but still fun? So I had fun writing them.
Love a good fomance. So I want to just shout out to the audience now that please, if you have questions for these authors, they will answer anything at all. And if they don't have the answer, they will perform for you. And so let's go to this question. I usually open a single malt and a cigar, maybe not the cigar, mostly single malt, when I'm writing a romantic intrigue. What do you do to get in the mood to write something sweet, Anna?
Well, I write at the same time every time I write. So it's like 6 a.m, but I keep all the lights off and I light some candles. So it's always cozy. So, and sometimes there's a Christmas tree if it's December. But yeah, anyway, so it's always just kind of cozy and I'm just waking up. So I'm still a little dreamy and it's sweet.
Oh, I would just nod off at my computer at 6 a.m.
Fair enough.
But that's awesome. I like that because, you know, it is kind of quiet and things are, it's a new day and there's
everyone else is still asleep. That's the key.
Yeah, that I understand. Okay. Amanda, what do you do I mean, you must have a routine because, you know, you've got a bunch of really good, sweet novels. So how do you do it?
Yeah, it's quite good being in the UK because all of my American colleagues, either with BSB or GCLS or whoever I'm working with, you usually wake up about 1 o'clock in the afternoon for me. So if I'm going to be fed up with people, it's going to be later on in the day. So like Anna, it's going to be first thing when I'm on my own and nobody's irritated me. There's a sort of short window, about 2 hours before the world starts. And yeah, and it sounds awful, but it's just true. I mean, I write sweet romance, but as you know, Carsen, I'm pretty sarcastic and cutting. I'm not the sweetest person on earth. So yeah, I kind of need to get myself into that mindset and kind of extract me from the scenario and anything else external from the scenario. I might read some like similar scenes or watch some TV or something to try to get myself into that mindset. It's just about sort of, I think for me, it's about cleansing my mind a little bit of sort of anything else and just trying to get really under the skin of those characters in that moment. But yeah, it's got to be first thing in the morning before other people are around.
So if you want to interact with Amanda, set your world clock so that you're
as early as possible.
I love it. You have a sweet, gooey middle. I know it. Kathy, how do you get in the mood to write sweet?
It's like Amanda said, almost every book before I start, I'm going to reread different things that I find inspiring in romance novels or other sorts of novels that have to do with women falling in love. And, you know, I get a lot of good ideas from Grey's Anatomy. You know, that's the TV show where relationships they're always going on, and they're always either breaking up or coming together or doing something crazy. And it's dumb, but you know, it whatever helps. When I wrote this most recent book, I thought, well, what's going to help me not only with sweetness, but just the story in general. And I started listening to a whole bunch of YouTube 40s music.
Ah,
And
Swing?
it was
Swing?
great. Yeah, swing music. And it was actually, I could just envision, you know, the places where people were dancing like that. I'm sure there's a lot of movies that are good for stuff like that. And that I find very romantic, and at least for this particular story, because of the time setting. So I guess I've used music in other ways too, to help my brain get in the mood for writing something like that.
yeah, I think music's a great tool. CJ, how about you? What do you do to keep sweet?
So like Anna, I have a very specific window of time I write, like from 8 till 9, like on the weekdays. That's when I get my writing. So I think the moment I start a book, it's always in my mind of what those scenes are going to look like, the kiss, the build up, all of that. So I will literally brainstorm for months before I get to them. And by then I'm hoping I have the inspiration I need to get it done.
That's a lot of work. And but
everyone's got it. Like, I want everything to be unique to the characters, and I don't want to, the more books I write, I'm like, I have to come up with new stuff, make it interesting. And the first one I wrote was so easy. I wrote that first. It just like popped into my head. I was like, the shower scene, this is how it's gonna go. And then beyond that, every time I write it now, it's like I've got to evolve and make it good for the characters, but also unique for the book.
everybody's going, what book has the shower scene?
Yeah.
I know Horizons.
Go get it now. Charlotte, I haven't asked you how you keep sweet, have I?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. I can't be on a grading day. So I'm like Amanda, I can't be annoyed. Like
She's a professor. So.
Yeah, I'm a professor. I cannot be after grading. It can't even be the same day, even if there's been a few hours since grading. I'll just be too annoyed. So, and then I usually can't do it after teaching either. So this sounds like sounds like I hate my job. I love my job, but they're very divorced in my head, writing and my day job. So I generally do it on a non-teaching, non-grading day. And that's basically
Sunday,
my focus.
today.
Yeah. Yeah.
You should be writing right now.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, well, we have a couple of audience questions. So this I'm going to take the second one first. I do think a polyamorous relationship can be sweet. I've read one, and I don't think we should be limited in our opinions. And I think this is a great question, because, and you could take a broader view as well. Like, is there anything that just can't be sweet? Or can everything be made sweet? You all kind of touched on this a little bit, but expound, Amanda.
Yeah, I think so. I think anything can be sweet. It's like I said at the start, when you actually look at the definitions of different sweetness, no one can agree. So it's all in the eye of the beholder, is whatever you think is sweet. And I think any kind of relationship can be sweet. There aren't any boundaries. You know, we write, you know, about queer romance, and you know, there are people who would say that that's not sweet, but you know, we write it and we, you know, sell it to many people, and it's different for everyone what you would actually define as sweet. But I think any relationship is sweet in my book.
Queer is a big bucket. We can all, yeah, exactly. How about you, CJ?
Yeah, I like I said, I'm on the fence. I think you can really, if you've got the right imagination, you can take anything and go anywhere with it. And I have read a polyamorous romance. It was less sweet and more on the erotica side, but I could see how you could make it sweet, because I think we need to, especially since we are queer writers and it is such a big bucket, there's no reason why we need to limit what we feel is sweet or the right kind of romance, because everybody deserves to experience what they find right in romance. So I think it's good that there should be a lot of different ways of looking at relationships and how those come together and how those work.
I totally agree. Kathy, so I've read your polyamorous romance. Remind me the title.
Forsaking All Others.
Forsaking All Others. And I definitely think there were sweet elements to the relationship, the throuple. So tell us what I mean, did you view that novel as sweet when you were writing it? Do you?
I didn't really think about it that way, but the thing about that particular novel was it wasn't about a polyamorous relationship. It was about one of the two main characters being in a polyamorous relationship and meeting with someone who didn't believe in that at all, and they fall in love. And I definitely think the end of it was really sweet. There was some angsty parts in the beginning and the middle, because that's a big difference between somebody who firmly believes in monogamy and somebody who firmly does not. So there was a lot of change for people in it, and it was. But I think, yeah, in the end, because that's what happens. We get the happily ever after. What's sweet about that, right?
Exactly. So I'm going to bounce off you real quick for this other question. And the question is directed to you. What advice would you give to Claire, a Black author looking to write interracial lesbian romance? So, and if any of the rest of you have something in that vein, feel free to chime in. But Kathy, do you have a few quick words of advice?
Well, it's just my philosophy not to give too much in the way of advice, but I will say what I did. And in order to write this was, I did a lot of research. I did a lot of reading. I also thought in terms of African-American people I know and what I know of their experience and their personalities. But, this is a tough one because this is way back in the 40s. It would be a completely different vibe, completely different scenario if it was modern day. Both characters would be much different. But the one thing that Bold Strokes requires is, if you're going to write an interracial romance, that you need to have somebody review it. And I did, one of the other Bold Strokes writers, because no matter how good you think you are, you might miss something that is wrong, is stereotypical or something like that. But I'm just going to end with one thing I read in a discussion on Twitter about this, and I thought it was the best thing I'd ever read about it. It's like, if you're a white person who's going to write characters of a different color and cultural background than you, there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but you need to do your homework, and writers need empathy. They don't need experience, they need empathy and good research.
That's a really good point. So we're at close to the end of the panel, so I'm going to do kind of a quick go around the room and tell us reiterate what your current book is, and tell us if you're working on something new in just like a couple of words. We'll start with Amanda, because I know you're always working on something new.
I am, yeah. My next release is going to be called Reading Her. It comes out in February. It's an awkward teenager who goes to the gym because he's being bullied. The fitness instructor there takes him under her wing, but unfortunately he stole his mother's credit card to go to the gym, and she is not too happy about that.
Angsty but sweet, I bet.
Absolutely, yeah.
Charlotte, you have a toddler and you're a professor, and tell us, are you working on something new?
I am actually, because I
Excellent.
do need breaks. I do need a break from my reality. So my next book, it'll come out around Christmas. I think it's November. Is a Picture Perfect Christmas. It's about two photographers in a cute mountain town where I was born, in Colorado.
That sounds sweet.
It's gonna be.
And-
Yeah.
So Anna, you touched on, you're writing the second book in the Alder series. Who are the main characters people we already met in the first book?
They are not. They are new characters, though the characters from freshman year do have some cameos throughout, because they're all the same age. So they will be sophomores in this sophomore year book as well.
Excellent, because they're great
Yeah.
characters. I look forward to seeing all of
Thank
them
you.
again. CJ, tell us all the things.
My new book, no release date yet, but it'll probably be sometime this year. It's called Between Takes. It takes place in the film industry in Toronto, and it's about the star of a hit show falls for the intimacy coordinator that they've hired for that season.
Excellent. That sounds very intriguing. Kathy, what are you working on now?
I am, unusually enough, not working on anything right now. I'm taking a break and considering what to do next. So my book that's just out now is a historical 1940s era interracial romance set in San Francisco at the end of World War II.
Excellent. Well, we all look forward to reading that. And thanks for joining us. And y'all have a wonderful Sunday afternoon.
Thanks, Carsen.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks,
Thanks.
Carsen.